everything they had into making this fantastic RPG.
Basically, it was their one last shot at redemption.
Yet it became a new beginning.
We
were very happy that it sold more than we had anticipated or expected.
I went nuts. That year, when I made a Christmas list to give to my parents, it had one item on it, and that was Final Fantasy.
But monumental successes can lead to terrible failures.
It was really beautiful to watch, but you also had to listen to the story and listen to the acting, and it really just killed it.
Find out where it came from and where it's going. This is the epic story of Final Fantasy. In 1987, a small Japanese game company named SquareSoft is facing an uncertain future.
Square was a very small publisher in Japan. They'd come out with a number of games for the Nintendo Famicom here in Japan. But really, there was nothing to distinguish them, to set them apart from the large number of small development houses that were able to thrive in Japan during the Famicom's heyday.
But if they don't produce a breakout hit soon, their doors will be closing for good.
Really, they needed not just a hit, but a mega hit if they were going to keep the company around.
Facing an uncertain future, SquareSoft gambles on one final game.
They called it Final Fantasy because this was going to be their last game. You know, they were going to put everything they had into making this fantastic RPG, and it was going to be their last one, and they were all going to go off and do their own thing.
Square turns to Hironobu Sakaguchi, one of their resident game designers, to lead the project.
Sakaguchi was working before at Square. I think that he enjoyed his job, but I think he was frustrated that no matter what he was doing, it never seemed to be enough. Not only for the company Square, but also for himself personally. Sakaguchi, I think, was going to leave the gaming industry.
Sakaguchi, he's really the father of Final Fantasy, and you know, if there's one man who this whole thing, and it's his child.
Inspired by Dragon Quest, Sakaguchi decides his project will be a role-playing game and hires well-known artist Yoshitaka Amano.
For the players, the actual excitement in playing the game really comes from developing a character, seeing that character win battles, or from seeing a great storyline that takes the character into different places in the game. That in and of itself is exciting, but it has a much greater impact when it's coupled with the graphics and the music that go with it.
Yoshitaka Amano is a fairly respected artist in Japan, a traditional painter. His works are very dynamic and flowing. As an artist, he really liked to challenge himself. He saw this as an opportunity to try the new thing. He saw the Famicom as just another canvas on which he could try to do something artistic.
For the score, SquareSoft turns to their in-house composer, Nobuo Uematsu.
I started with a computer game for a friend's company. After finishing that, another friend that worked at SquareSoft was looking for a new composer. The only available jobs for a composer back then were in the games industry. So at that time, Square didn't have anyone in charge of their soundtracks, and that's when I joined.
In my mind, Nobuo Uematsu, he really brought a lot of soul to the Final Fantasy games. With his NES and SNES music, it was just brilliant considering what limited tools he was working with. He was able to get players to really feel a story with the music itself.
With the team in place, work begins.
So Final Fantasy was from the beginning designed to be impressive, designed to be a spectacle that was far beyond graphically, musically, anything that players had seen before. So that's kind of been a hallmark of the series since the start.
Square releases Final Fantasy in Japan on December 18th, 1987. And audiences are stunned.
Final Fantasy I was a huge success. It didn't quite reach the stratospheric heights of Dragon Quest, but it was clearly the second best RPG that Japan had ever seen. And you know, compared to Dragon Quest, second place isn't that bad. It was enough to save the company. Of course, then, work on Final Fantasy II began soon thereafter.
Despite the popularity of the first game, Square decides that their sequel can be even better.
Never mind the consumer reaction. I think the reaction of the original designers and programmers was, oh my god, we've made this thing is so cool, you know, we have to do another one.
Final Fantasy II arrives on December 17, 1988, and fans take notice.
Final Fantasy II was even more successful than the first one. I think that word of mouth on the first one was great. The Famicom user base had expanded even further. Users were ready for another RPG of this kind. Square had really succeeded in making that mega hit that they wanted. They had the success and they had the name recognition, and all they had to do from here on out was keep making the games.
Sakaguchi and his team begin working on number 3 and concentrate on a new look.
Final Fantasy III had much more complicated graphics than either the first or second Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy III was a late generation Nintendo game. It came out in 1990, and by this point, Nintendo's system had given up all its secrets. So what the developers were able to do with it was far beyond what they were able to do even 2-3 years before.
The improvements don't go unnoticed. When Square releases the game on April 27, 1990, millions of fans rush out to buy it.
Final Fantasy III was a big success, just like 1 and 2 before it. Square had a good brand name and they kept making quality titles.
For Square, the series truly proves to be a fantasy.
The fans had come to see Final Fantasy not just as a popular game, but it had become a cultural phenomenon.
But would their success translate to another country or on a new system?